Welcome to Greater Good Radio Hawaii, where leaders inspire leaders. Greater Good Radio Hawaii is dedicated to social entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Evan Leong, and with me is my co-host, Carrie Leong.
Today's guest is John Davidson. Mr. Davidson is an entrepreneur and venture capitalist in the communications networking industry. John achieved his first successful IPO in 1983 as a founder of Ungermann Bass, Inc., and his first successful acquisition with Network Telesystems, Inc. He is active now as an angel investor in a number of software startup companies, currently serving as chairman of EzRez Software, White Hat Security, Radio Time, and Kahala Code Factory. Please welcome to Greater Good Radio, John Davidson.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So you're an independent advisor for several high-tech startup companies.
I am, and that sounds like it might be a useful thing to do. It is part of the way I might describe myself at present.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what exactly you do?
I will. When we talk about the independent companies that I'm helping as chairman, for example, or director or angel investor, those are companies that I got started with after my second company that you mentioned, Network Telesystems, was acquired, and before I got into a venture firm, which is now called Startup Capital Ventures, and which is formalizing that process of angel investing. So I have a kind of a continuum of activities, which had a startup that you mentioned called Ungermann Bass, and that was one in which I participated as a founder. Then a second company, the Network Telesystems, where I was the founding CEO. And then a means of helping a number of small companies as an angel investor and director. And now, using other people's money, thank you very much, we're able to broaden that capability and formalize the process of investing, the process of helping, performing director roles. And so it feels to me like that's kind of a career which has been blossoming all along and extends the reach of the particular technical and entrepreneurial things that I can do.
It seems like an evolution, right? You start off as an entrepreneur, you end up being an entrepreneur, and then you say, well, I'll be an investor and help other entrepreneurs, and now I'll get other people's money and let them utilize my knowledge, my resources, and so on, and stay in this without having to have the necessarily entrepreneurial responsibilities.
Without all the headaches. I would agree, and it's only in retrospect that I can actually describe a career that has that set of properties, because I wouldn't have planned it that way. I don't think anybody can really see how they're going to, evolve over a lifetime, and there's all sorts of choices you make along the way. I think I'm trying to make sense of the model now when I look back on it and say, okay, that's a good way to say that things were upward oriented in each progressive step rather than just random. It may not actually be true, but it's a nice way for me to think about it.
So did you just kind of see what was needed from the people you knew, and then these new companies evolved or were born from that?
Well, this is a tough one because I think a guy like me who has a technology background, and I went to the University of Hawaii to get a PhD in the computer science field, would like to ultimately aspire to be thought of as an inventor. And so an inventor is always creating things and maybe trying to realize some good from their invention, some of which could be thought of as company building, because that comes out of a good idea. And so in the early career, I did a lot of the inventing. In this secondary set of stages, what we do is we can see there are other people who are good at inventing, and they can be helped a little bit. Now, with a technical background, I'm really nicely positioned to help small technical companies because I can understand what they're talking about. And where I live most of the time, when I'm not here, in the Silicon Valley, it's a very important thing to try and help those companies find their way. There's a lot of good technologists, but they've got to build businesses. And so the potential for understanding what they're talking about and then guiding them is something that I think is a way of contributing. And so the ideas aren't all mine anymore. They are somebody else's, but the growth of the idea, the tuning of the idea, and then the blossoming of a business are things that I can contribute to.
So what are the differences that you see between Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and Hawaii entrepreneurs?
Well, I do see some differences. I see some differences in the number of them. Okay, the Valley is just crawling with people who have either been born there or come there as students, perhaps Stanford or Berkeley or Santa Clara or others, and or who have moved there despite the enormous costs of living in the Valley, in order to try and participate in this unbelievable thing that happens in the Valley. And the Valley is just equipped with all of the resources that are needed to try and have people come into your company and help it, either as advisors or as employees or directors or financial sorts. So there the infrastructure is completely built out, maybe more than any place in the world. And here in Hawaii, it's a fledgling infrastructure. It still has this share of bright people who would like to build really neat companies. But the resources that can surround them aren't always as plentiful and as deep as the resources that are in the Valley.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.